Bloomberg News.
Ian Williams, he's Chief Executive of Charteris, where he manages a British government bond fund, the top performing UK government bond fund. So, Lord Lamont, potential for a funding strike. Are his fears overblown?
Well, probably we're not going to get one now, because at the moment the Bank of England is busy buying gilts in the gilt market, and effectively the government is monetising the deficit by a circular route. The Treasury is selling gilts directly to the Bank of England. So all the time the Bank of England is in there buying gilts, they're effectively funding a big chunk of the deficit by selling gilts directly to the Bank of England. So at the moment they're getting away with it.
How much longer can that last, though? Because we've got the Institute of Fiscal Studies saying the budget deficit to hit 10% next year. The Ernst & Young Item Club says more than 11%. That's £150 billion, and one of the worst, I think, in the G20.
That's right, but the quantitative easing programme, the first stage is 75 billion, and they may, and it's not certain whether they will, but they may move to a second phase of another 75 billion. So they potentially have the ability, should they choose to effectively monetise a vast chunk of this. The problem for the gilt markets, well, the bond markets per se, corporate bonds as well, is going to come, especially the longer dated bonds, is going to come when the policy of quantitative easing, they decide they just can't do it anymore. Because it's not a cost-free exercise. The cost is potentially inflation further down the road. I mean, this is printing money to pay the government's overspending. So the more money they print, the higher the potential inflation further out. So you haven't got actually a funding crisis at the moment, but what they're doing, they're funding it in a convenient way, if you like, that doesn't present the market with these problems. But at some stage, they're going to appear on the horizon.
But is there some kind of finite limit? Is the sky the limit, or the markets will ultimately decide by pushing up the yields on UK government bonds, for example?
Well, the quantitative easing programme only goes out to 25-year bonds. So if there's risk in the gilt market, the risk is in the longer dated conventional bonds, because that's where the quantitative easing programme doesn't kick in, and also that's the ones that are greatest risk for fears of future inflation. So what we expect to see happen is, at some stage, the yield curve is going to steepen quite sharply, and bonds longer than 25 years in duration could perform quite badly, both corporate bonds and government bonds.
Is that something we could see replicated in the United States and the Eurozone as well?
Yes, I think so, because they're pursuing similar policies. I mean, there's all around the world. I mean, the Eurozone, not quite, but America, Switzerland, UK, virtually everywhere you look, Japan, are going down the road of quantitative easing and monetising their deficits. They haven't quite gone there in the Eurozone yet.
And tomorrow, just over 24 hours to go before Elliott gets up in Parliament to deliver that budget, what signal should he give towards repaying that in terms of either slashing expenditure or raising taxes?
Well, I mean, the big event for the government isn't the budget tomorrow, it's the election in a year's time. They have to fight a general election by May 2010. So everything and anything they do will be governed towards the election. They can't cut taxes because, as we've heard, the budget deficit is already too high. They can't raise taxes because the economy is still in recession, and any drawdown of the fiscal deficit would clamp the economic recovery. So they can't do anything really of any meaningful event. So probably a do nothing. It's a non-event budget, to be honest.
Okay, Ian Williams, thanks very much for joining us from Charteris there.
Hear more Bloomberg News reports on the Bloomberg Terminal at AV Go, on Bloomberg Television, and on Bloomberg Radio.